Hi everyone. So we're moving from IoT to wholesale, and we are going to focus for the next 40 minutes on a specific topic, which is VoLTE roaming. And before I welcome my panelists on stage and start talking about VoLTE roaming and the dynamics of this particular topic, I'd first like to introduce Nitin. Nitin Bas from Kaleido Intelligence. Nitin will give us a few insights on the market developments and probably an update on what we saw already last year. So, Nitin. Thank you. And I'll leave the floor to you. I'll come back in a few minutes.
Great. I think I'll stand. Great. OK. Hello. Good afternoon, guys. It's great to be back at the MEF Global Forum. Pleasure to see you all. So today, I've got a few slides, looking into how VoLTE roaming has evolved over the last 12 months. I was here last year presenting the updates on VoLTE roaming. So this year I'll give you a bit more, update on the current status. What we see from Kaleido Intelligence. What's been happening over the 12 months. Some key findings from operator surveys that Kaleido conducts. But before that, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Nitin Bas. I'm Chief Analyst at Kaleido Intelligence. If you don't know us, we are a roaming and connectivity focused market research and analyst firm based in the UK. We publish a lot of research on wholesale and roaming strategies, be it VoLTE, be it 5G, all the cool topics. Travel eSIM is a great topic for us these days. And part of how we do our research is we talk. We talk to not just the vendors, not just the service providers, but also to a lot of operators. So every year we conduct multiple surveys of mobile operators on their attitude to VoLTE roaming, 5G roaming, how they see the industry as a whole coming together, driving this going forward. So today I'll be presenting some of the key findings from those surveys, plus a bit of an update on what or how VoLTE roaming looks today. So here's a first stat, an interesting stat for you guys. Last year, I presented a similar slide, the map, courtesy of the GSMA. Last year, we had just around 175 mobile operators in around 75 countries who had launched VoLTE roaming services. All right? 12 months later, we're here today. I'm looking at just over 175 operators this year, but as of Feb 2024, it's just over 180, maybe 181, 182, in just over 80 markets. So you must be wondering what happened over the last 12 months. Only 5, 6, 10 operators in 5, 10 markets have launched VoLTE roaming. But one thing that we need to take into consideration is this was just around 50 mobile operators in 2021, right? So substantial increase from 2021 to 2024, over 180 mobile operators in more than 80 countries. Now, the key stat that you should be thinking about, or as an industry, what we should be thinking about is the number of bilateral agreements that these mobile operators have in place. Based on our latest survey, it's just around 1% of the mobile operators around the world who've launched VoLTE roaming have over 100 roaming agreements. Majority of them, less than 50. In some cases, less than 10. So it's a matter of not just launching VoLTE roaming just for the namesake, but it's also about having those bilateral agreements in place to offer the comprehensive geographical coverage that you would want to give your customers around the world. So that's the market status right now, but what we are seeing now is that operators around the world are indeed prioritizing VoLTE roaming. So we just recently concluded our wholesale roaming survey. We had 60+ mobile operators who took part. Last year, we had 100+ mobile operators who took part, and 96% of them said VoLTE roaming is their #1 priority. This year, out of the 60+, I think 85% of them saying that's the immediate priority. That's what they're working on. We have a 5G roaming survey in field right now. We've had just over 50 operators who've taken part so far. I'll give you some exclusive early findings from the survey. around 73% of the operators believe that, it is high time that they work on VoLTE roaming before they even start thinking about 5G standalone roaming. We all know the reason why. So that's the market status now. Very optimistic. We previously said 2023, 2024 is going to be the year when it finally takes off. So we're still focused on that. There's a lot of optimism in the industry as we speak. Now, one of the primary drivers that's driving, this sudden, we've been talking about VoLTE roaming for many, many years. So what's driving this now? And the primary factor for that is the network sunsetting. As you can see from the chart, around 73% believe that this is the primary driver for, that's impacting their international VoLTE roaming strategies for roaming business units around the world. A quick update as of February 2024. We've got 67 operators planned 2G network closures, 82 planned 3G network closures. We've already had 75 and 81 2G and 3G network shutdowns happen already. So alongside the fact that, operators are working towards 5G standalone, in which case we know that, it'll be for VoLTE, voice over new radio, and the fallback will be on VoLTE, plus the fact that, we have a comprehensive device ecosystem now supporting VoLTE, plus the fact that with 350 plus VoLTE domestic network launches means that, this is prime time that we drive VoLTE roaming going forward. Now, challenges, we were at VAS in Croatia recently, a few months ago, and we've been talking to a lot of mobile operators there. There was this one operator who scaled, over the 6 months, they scaled their VoLTE roaming agreements from less than 50 to well over 100. So there is a lot of operators who are driving this forward, and these are the operators, these are the tier 1 operators who are also working towards launching 5G standalone as well as 5G non-standalone, expansion of 5G non-standalone around the world. Now, so what about the others? So there are several challenges. We've discussed things like testing, and we've discussed having those bilateral agreements in place. But amongst those who are still planning or thinking about VoLTE roaming, the answer is right in front of you. When it comes to charging and billing, everybody understands what the principles are, how it all works. But as you can see from the chart, around 75, 76% of the operators still need support in testing and implementing VoLTE roaming. So as an industry as a whole, the operators, there are tier 1 operators and bigger operator groups who are driving this going forward, but there still needs a lot of work to be done in supporting a lot of the other operators to launch. Only then you can think about having a comprehensive VoLTE roaming coverage before 5G standalone roaming takes over. And that's a quick update for you guys from us, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you. So with no further ado, thank you, Nitin, come back. I'd like to welcome my panelists on stage. Alberto from Telefonica, please do come. Alberto, please have a seat. Alberto is the head of market intelligence and B2B. Then I'd like to welcome Jean Pradas. Jean from BTS.
Thank you.
Please have a seat, Jean, Senior Vice President, Global Strategic Development. Kenneth, please welcome Kenneth Pradas, the Senior Product Manager. And last but not least, Guillaume, please welcome Vice President, Product Management. And last but not least, of course, Nitin, please have a seat.
All right.
Welcome to this panel, guys. Great. A privilege for me to talk to you all, so thank you very much. So I think I'll go to first you, Jean. I think last year we were at Capacity Europe and we were having a chat and you said we need to talk about VoLTE roaming. So Correct. Here you go, Jean. Not only do we talk about VoLTE roaming, but on stage, recorded, perfect. So can you give us a bit of an insight, and I'd like to hear the views of also Alberto and maybe Guillaume on this, on why do we need to talk about VoLTE roaming? What's the, why should operators and players look at VoLTE roaming, and why now?
Well, let's, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for being here. I hope it's being taped, and so other people can also share in what's going to be discussed, because the fact is that VoLTE is a disruption in the market, especially for those companies who are aggregators, etc. VoLTE is, IPX has been around for at least 15 years. As Martinez mentioned earlier, there's been obstacles in why some organizations push it, others don't. One of them, of course, is economics. All right, you're doing peer-to-peer. There's really no cash interchanging partners in that respect. So I mean, voice is an area that has high revenues, has a little less of a percentage on the margin side, but it's still very, very important, very interesting for CEOs when it comes at the end of the quarter. If they need to, they need good numbers, they always look at the voice people to develop that. So what's happened this past year, and that's why it's very important, is this past summer we noticed the impact in the marketplace. Those countries that are tourist countries, let's call it Spain, Greece, Italy, other areas, noticed a big hit in their voice business, going to VoLTE. A good hit means at least 20 to 30% moved, the traffic went to VoLTE rather than the typical bilateral, organizations, all right? So what happens? So there's less minutes into the market, less trading, which has an impact, especially if you're looking for a bilateral agreement where you're depending on each other to net off so that there's less balance of payments. And so what happens is a lot of companies fall short on their bilaterals or on their agreements because they have less business to deal and trade with. Right? So that became a factor in a number of organizations throughout Europe and other areas around the world. So it's an important factor. It's a disruptor. We all talk about the OTTs and how they disrupted the business. If you're from the aggregator point of view, all right, that's a different story. But still, it's a technology that's been around. It's being promoted more and more. It's a secured technology, but it's a disruptor for those of us in the transport business.
Very interesting comment. So that really is, I'll pick two things from what you said, Jean. One is the disrupting element, and also the fact that you saw traffic changing, particularly in those countries, holiday destination countries, in Spain, and probably Telefonica. I'm looking at you, Alberto, of course. Would you sort of tie in with what Jean was just saying about that traffic change in your network? Or?
Completely, no. At the end, when we move from traditional minutes to VoLTE, we see that, at least at a wholesale roaming perspective, we see that 95% of the value all of a sudden disappears. And this is a fact, no? Because at the end, with a tiny amount of megabytes, you can play several minutes. But on the other hand, we are in this position that 2G and 3G networks are shutting down. And if we want to keep voice services as a global service as we have today so that we can call from everywhere to everybody, we need to move to VoLTE. There's no way back for us. It's a must. So I understand the financial impact. It is huge. But on the other hand, nobody's going to stop technology. 2G and 3G is going to disappear. Everything is going to be data. Actually, we have already a couple of examples in the world. For instance, the US is a country that is mostly data already. There's no voice. And it's going to happen everywhere. Spain, Germany, that's going to happen.
Okay. Disruption, would you agree? I mean, I'm looking at Kenneth or Guillaume as well. You can both comment on that side of the business from your pure carrier perspective.
I guess the problem statement has been explained quite clearly. And I think one of the aspects of the transition to VoLTE that we've been observing in our network also is how abrupt is the transition from the traditional international voice business to when a destination migrates to VoLTE immediately overnight, most of the traffic coming from this destination is kind of disappearing from the wholesale business, right? So I think it's been also interesting. I mean, to see as well how disruptive it is and how sudden it is when the technical migration happened, the traffic kind of go immediately, right? So I think that's something we've observed. I think that's the disruptive aspect of the technology, and obviously there is nothing that we can do to kind of stop that migration. But obviously, then there is also some aspects to be looked at to be able to monitor that migration, to control. I mean, we're kind of moving as well from one technology to another one, so we still need to be in control. I would say, as an IPX, we need also to be able to look at this traffic that is now going through the data pipe of the roaming. So it's kind of create also a list of challenges to be able to be in control of the quality, to be able to monitor, to be able to troubleshoot. I mean, all these aspects needs to be managed, while we see the transition.
Exactly, if I may add one thing, so indeed VoLTE is very disruptive, and as you all mentioned, there is quite some business impacts. But VoLTE is also a necessity. It's a necessity in order to secure the future voice business of the operator. So that's also something very important. So today VoLTE is very focused on continuing or at least securing voice into the 4G environment. But next to this, VoLTE is also considered a building block in 5G NSA, but also 5G standalone. So it's very important that we help those operators moving forward in this disruptive transition. And those operators, they need to prepare themselves and they need to secure the voice business as well to counter the OTTs, of course, because the voice business is still very significant for many of the operators worldwide.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Susie, because Kenneth mentioned an interesting word, that it's a necessity, when you migrate to 5G standard. At the same time, there's a stat that we found in our survey that around 15 to 20% of some of the operators, they're not exactly clear what to do, how to do it, how to implement it. So they are choosing to, from the operator perspective, choosing to take a wait and see approach, see how it works out. You mentioned the reduction in traffic and migrating to VoLTE. So how does that impact their business models? How does that impact their targets for the year? So there is a small percentage of operators who are taking a wait and see approach as well. So you need to take them into consideration as well.
Yeah. Good. So we talked about disruption, obviously, and it's a sort of natural step into also making sure that that also gives a backup option and further development on 5G SA. So it's a necessity. I think some of you mentioned that as well. But still, I mean, VoLTE roaming is here. What are the benefits? What are the opportunities still that we can grab out of the VoLTE roaming? What can we get out of that? I mean, okay. Alberto?
First of all, something that we didn't mention yet is that it provides a way better service for the customer. So the customers will be happier using this service, and this is what we experience. And on the second hand, for instance, for us as a wholesale roaming unit, it actually simplifies our agreements in the sense that we talk about data, and in most of the cases we are starting to forget about voice in this transition that we are having. So I would say it's mostly advantages. It comes with challenge, as we are discussing from a technical perspective, because of the fact that there's operators that are still not ready for VoLTE. Therefore, we don't have a global service as we want to have. But I think we are going in this direction.
Benefits on the pure carrier side and aggregator side, maybe? What do you see? What are the opportunities at stake there?
Well, I think, it's like when we talk about OTTs, the overall voice market is growing. It's just shifting, all right? The overall voice, if you look at industry stats, are at least growing at least 5%, 5 to 7%. But of course, it's going more towards the data-driven OTTs rather than billable voice minutes. All right, VoLTE is going to be another disruptor in that area. But again, OTTs have also brought opportunities into the market in various different fields and very different areas. So VoLTE will also bring those opportunities to the market. The presentation talked about decommissioning of 2G, 3G. That's taken a long time. And even in certain geographical areas, it's going to even take longer, all right? And so, everybody talks, so a lot of operators are talking, I want to decommission, forget about 2, 3G, but it's not happening because there's a demand for that 2, 3G usage in those different geographical areas. So, I mean, it will bring opportunities. Definitely, it will affect the aggregators a lot more than operators themselves. But between operators, there's also a factor because you have operators who have their own divisions who do voice transport versus the main company. You know, like Telefonica has got their Telefonica de España, and then they have Telefonica Global Services. So within their own organizations, there will be shifting around of focus.
I would also like to have your views, guys, on the carrier, pure carrier side, and obviously your neutral cap. You know, where do you see pockets of growth? Where do you see that opportunity? Customer, when we talked about customer, quality of experience being enhanced. We talked about you know, that window of opportunity with 2G, 3G, not, you know, the natural move of the market, but still, what do you know, what makes you believe and be there as VoLTE roaming evangelists, if I can say it this way? Guillaume or Ken, yeah.
I mean, there is one aspect, I mean, it's been mentioned also by Jean, right, which is the interoperability, right? So it's not like the entire MNO is going to adopt VoLTE overnight, right? Yeah. So I think there is also an opportunity for us as a carrier to manage this interoperability, to ensure like the networks who are going to take their time can still communicate with the, you know, the most advanced network. So there is also this opportunity on our side to manage the complexity, to onboard the complexity on our side, and to resolve that for our customers. So that's definitively one opportunity. Another opportunity also, this is to, you know, to provide the visibility of what is happening, to ensure like we're going to be like in control, and we can provide this expertise to our MNO customers, while the transition is going to probably to last, you know, multiple years, right? If not like 10 years or things like that. So there is also an opportunity for us, and it's been our role as IPX to always facilitate, you know, the people who goes at different paths in adopting the technology, and ensure like, you know, these entire networks are still, you know, compatible, and the experience from the end user perspective is still maintained no matter where you roam, you know, across the world. So I think those elements kind of create opportunities also around VoLTE.
Yeah. If I may add one thing on the complexity, so indeed, VoLTE has been there already for 10 years. Still, it's considered extremely complex. We're talking about complexity on the devices, the SIM card, the network level, but also the roaming agreements. And that's exactly where an IPX provider can play a very vital role in enabling VoLTE for the operators. So operators, they understand the complexity. They understand that there's a need for investment in capital, but also in people. And that's a bit tricky for most of the operators, and that's exactly where IPX providers can help the operators moving forward. And it's also very closely linked to the sunset. So if we speak about the sunset announcements, there are already 70 announcements to happen prior to 2030. So here we're speaking about a sunset announcement covering both 2G and 3G, impacting those operators who are not VoLTE ready. So operators understand this severity of the issue, and they also understand, okay, if we invest in VoLTE, it will take a massive amount of capital, including people, and it will take a project of a couple of years. So operators start thinking about this, and they are really concerned about losing voice in critical destinations, and that's exactly where an IPX provider can help the operator. So that's what you could consider an opportunity.
I've got a quick point to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So we discussed sunsetting. You know, we discussed 5G standalone, why it's a necessity for migration of 5G. Is it you know, okay for me to say that customer experience is one of the biggest drivers as well? So you have 350 plus domestic VoLTE rollouts. You have billions of customers using OTT voice. They're used to this a high definition or a good experience in their domestic markets, and when they're roaming, they would naturally expect a certain level of quality, similar to what they experience in their domestic market. So if you can't keep your customers happy while roaming, then you know you're actually losing the customer. So that's also a big driver, right?
I think you're touching a very critical aspect there. It's the consumer happiness. So the consumers, indeed, they are expecting their voice service to work on a 2G, 3G, LTE, but also 5G NSA, 5G SA, and also a Wi-Fi network. So they expect their voice service to work. So the operators have a very critical it's very critical for the operators to make sure that their voice seamlessly works on all of those technologies. And they need to secure their voice business to counter the OTT application. So it's very critical for the operators. And that's, of course, where IPX players can help the operators as well.
Yeah, and we've seen the impact of OTT on voice, right? We've seen it already. But at the same time, why, as an operator, why would you want your traffic to go to an OTT provider, right? But at the same time, you see, I think Kenneth mentioned how to bridge the gap between, it takes years and years to set up all these bilateral multi-roaming agreements, but why would an operator, I mean, there is a couple of Asian operators who have recently announced that, if your customer travel to a country where multi-roaming is not supported, they will have free data to use an OTT service to make up for the voice calls. Why would you want them to lose the traffic to an OTT provider? And that's the reason why you need to scale up multi-roaming agreements.
And on top of that, so for what we know from our clients is that they do not isolate roaming services from their domestic network. You can have a client very happy for 2 years that all of a sudden travels to the States, has a bad experience because maybe it does not have voice services, and this will have an impact at the domestic market. You might lose this client, so it's extremely related, the service that we provide in roaming to the service that we provide domestically.
Let's keep in mind that roaming rates, let's take away the fact that, Europeans and some other areas have, you receive a message, you're being charged the same as your home rate, okay? Well, there's a lot of places where it's not, and where you're paying a very high premium, all right? And it goes back to this customer experience. I mean, you're expecting to charge quite a bit. The least you can do is provide a decent service, and that's where that comes in to protect certain revenue streams, by offering a better service, or supposed better service, and that who's ever paying is, is okay to pay, the $3 a minute or $180 for, setup charges or whatever the case is, so that's another aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like also to come back to the OTT element. I mean, you mentioned obviously that OTT is a threat. How is that experienced, particularly on your side, Telefonica, but also how do you, OTTs there, they're there, their applications are there, so fair enough. So how to make the best of multi-roaming to counterbalance the impact of OTTs? How is that being looked at and undertaken within your own organizations? What do you do to counteract this? Maybe starting with Alberto?
I think we should have learned our lessons now with SMS. No? So if we don't deliver the services that our clients need, they will look for alternatives. And for me, this is a lesson that I have in my notepad. VoLTE is the same. If we are not the ones delivering the service, high quality service, someone else will come and will take it, and OTTs are there.
On your side, Ken, and fixed and iBasis, do you...
So I think it's, again, very important to look at the consumer needs. So consumer wants voice service everywhere, anytime, on all places in the world. So that's where it differentiates itself from an OTT. So an operator has a 2G, 3G circuit switch service where OTT applications are unfortunately not relevant because they don't have the needed data capacity. So still, if you look at the consumer base, they expect from the operator to provide quality voice services, and that's exactly what it needs to focus on. So if you're making a phone call, for example, you will very likely dial immediately on your phone, knowing that you will always have coverage. And that's the strength of the mobile network operators network, and that's something that we need to leverage going forward. And VoLTE is just one element which secures the long-term voice service, but also video services and maybe other emerging services of the future. So very important that the mobile network operator keeps on evolving in this direction.
Do you share those views, Guillaume first, and then...
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is the quality aspect. I think that's very important. VoLTE is catching up, like, on the quality, and I mean, the quality of the voice is going to reach, like, the top standard. I think that's an important element. The other one is the reach, right? So You know, when you land in a country, you want to call your hotel. I mean, you're not going to call your hotel with the OTT, right? So I think we've seen like some of the operators at the beginning. We were saying, okay, you know, if you don't have the VoLTE, you know, headset, you're gonna like use the OTT channel, and you realize very quickly that you don't have the full reach, right? And that's a very bad experience again that you provide to your users. So I think we need to keep that in mind, right? The expectation in terms of, you know, the reachability on the voice, the quality on the voice, the way that voice is going to be always on is super high. If we are not able to deliver on that promise, that creates very high unsatisfaction for the end users. So I think that's an important element for all the MNOs, and I mean, they know about it, right? So they take it very seriously.
Is this what you see also, Nitin, in your...
Yeah, but just to add to that, I think from a customer perspective, I need to mention these new actors of travel leasing providers. You know, they're focused only on data. They're not focused on voice. And what we've seen during the pandemic is that voice is still important. You know, we saw a lot of traffic as well. So voice continues to be important, but at the same time, we need to discuss how it's from the retail perspective, how it's monetized. So some of the operators still continue to charge it based on minutes, so it's not included as data from the retail side, not from the wholesale side. And if you are a customer who's roaming and then you are billed for the minutes that you're making a call for VoLTE roaming, then you might actually use an OTT service. I mean, if you're booking a hotel through booking.com, they're always in touch through the app, through the OTT service. I mean, everybody's got a WhatsApp channel or WhatsApp service these days. I'm your hotel manager, just get in touch with me. So there are alternatives. At the same time, it's not going anywhere. So you still need to make sure you offer that same level of experience. Don't charge a lot because it should be included. I mean, there is the conversation of charging VoLTE traffic higher than the data traffic based on quality, right? But that's not how it's being done from the wholesale side these days, right? I mean, it's still being billed per the data rates. So
the majority of the cases, I fully agree with you. As an industry, I think we realize that there's no additional value by visiting 1 megabit because it's voice and because it carries data itself.
So I'd like to come back now. We're talking about business, charging models, etc. I saw in your presentation, Nitin, that one of the important things for MNOs is the VoLTE roaming commercial understanding. They need support in terms of commercial understanding and support. Can you further elaborate on this and maybe sort of you guys can give some insight into this?
I'm sure these guys can chip in, but I think one of the biggest challenges is testing. So it's not just a network device, it's also the interoperability and end-to-end testing. And for most roaming business units out there, it's a completely new process. So they need help and support with testing and implementing the service, and that's where you guys come in and help the mobile operators, right? So that's the biggest challenge, for them, testing, both in a laboratory environment as well as, a live network, right?
So testing, I remember last year we had that conversation already of testing being an issue
and in Croatia during the recently concluded VAS session, that was important. We had GSMA talking about, they're still trying to make sure that it's easier and it can be implemented as quickly as possible. But the majority of the operators, they still, because you have small roaming units, business units, and this is a completely new, start to finish, So and then you have mobile operators who wants to push this, but then their partners are not ready because they have not tested, they have not implemented it, but they want to push them by making, any new wholesale roaming agreements, we want them to be VoLTE ready. So it's as a community, as an industry as a whole, needs to come together and drive this forward. Otherwise, you have all these tier 1 big operators driving 5G standalone, 5G non-standalone. There will be a whole lot of operators left behind. How can you overcome that? I'm sure you guys have got answers to that to bridge that gap, but that's the challenge.
Would you share that kind of, from an operator perspective, do you see that testing and some of the comments that Nitin made? Do you see this as a challenge for you at Telefónica, or?
So in Telefónica, vast majority of our operations have already VoLTE and it's business as usual for us today. But I recall the first
Big
launch.
operator group.
No, but I recall the first service launch of VoLTE with each of the operators, and was complex, the first one. But after the second, third, you gain experience, you gain knowledge, and right now I would say it's quite smooth for everyone.
Okay. What do you see as being the major challenges for you, Kenneth and Guillaume, and also for you, Jean, in terms of enabling VoLTE from your side and from what you hear from your customer base? Is that matching what the different comments that we've heard so far? Is this?
Exactly. So it's all about the complexity. So we have this incredibly complex technology covering roaming testing, which is of course a very critical aspect, and where today we also learn from mobile network operators that they are understaffed to enable VoLTE roaming agreements. So the roaming team is limited in resources because they also have a lot of other technologies to enable. So that's a first critical aspect. And then you have the other aspect, the aspect of investing in an IMS. This is a critical component to enable VoLTE, which requires investment in capital, but also people. And that's where we see that operators are also looking at us to help them with the VoLTE enablement, knowing that they want to delay the investment in people and in CapEx. So that's something that we observe today, and that's where we can obviously help the operators. We can help the operators accelerate into VoLTE and overcome their challenges when we speak about consumer voice into sunset destinations, because let's be clear, that's today the primary business driver for VoLTE.
And let's not forget that roaming is a very profitable business, all right? When we had the pandemic, which just seemed just the other day, it took a big hit on all the operators and their revenues because no one was traveling, or less people were traveling. So they were hit very hard with the lack of roaming, all right? And roaming, and depends who you talk to, could be at least 20% of an operator's business, all right? And what you try to do is try to protect that revenue base. And that's where you bring in whatever technology is needed in order to cover your base and protect those revenues and try to increase that revenues, but definitely is to protect the revenues.
Can I, anything to add? Not can I, sorry, Guillaume.
Yeah, I mean, we were mentioning about testing. I kind of concur also to that. I think on top of the first thing that we did on our side was as well to provide full visibility, right? Because suddenly, we're not used to look at what is going through the data pipe, and suddenly the voice is going through, right? With these SIP protocols, I think one of the things we did immediately is to provide the visibility, on what is happening in this data pipe, right? To be able to look at the SIP and look at, the new patterns of problem that has been appeared by this VoLTE roaming. So I guess on top of the investment and the testing, I think providing the full visibility is very important. So the MNO get the capabilities to understand what is happening and to be able to troubleshoot and provide this, this quality that is expected, right? So I think that's important.
Great, thank you. We are nearly reaching, the end of the session. Are there any questions? Yes, there is one question in the room.
Tenny, when you say your name and company, please.
My name is Tenny Stoffman from Vastanet Technologies. My question is first to Nitin and then to Alberto. So Nitin, I said the report, I said the research you shared earlier. I noticed that Africa is not covered. Just wondering if there's going to be any extension towards that side going forward, because I know it's kind of gray at the moment because of the network coverage and all of that. But just wondering if you have if you don't anything at all in that area.
Yeah.
And then,
Sorry.
Should I just ask the second question? Yeah. So I wanted to know the impact of VoLTE on gaming, and that is because, of course, Telefonica was the one that spoke on gaming yesterday. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll take the first one. So there are several countries around the world. I think I mentioned during my presentation there are 350 plus domestic launches in VoLTE, but only 180 plus VoLTE roaming launches so far. And there are several countries where, as Kenneth mentioned, you need to invest in an IMS core to enable this, and that's not the case everywhere. So there are, some of the operators that we speak to, not just in Africa or in some Latin American markets as well as some Asian markets, is that their priority right now is also making sure their customers have a 4G roaming coverage, comprehensive 4G roaming coverage around the world. So it's in their priority list. They understand it's sunsetting, VoLTE readiness, migration to 5G standalone. 5G standalone is not even in their roadmap, current more immediate roadmap. So they're focused on many other things, and there are several operators who were hit during the pandemic who are, recouping their revenues right now. So their immediate roadmap may be something else, but as a conclusion, everybody is focused on this. It's as an industry, everybody understands that that's what we need to. That's the next step, and it's fundamental for 5G standalone roaming, right? So alongside voice over new radio, fallback to VoLTE is needed. So they understand it's fundamental going forward. But yeah, hopefully over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll see more coverage around the world.
And as I understood, the impact of VoLTE in gaming. So I don't see a direct impact per se, but gaming by default requires low latency and very high consumption of data. This is 5G and 5G SA, I would say. In order to deploy 5G, we need to shut down 2G and 3G because basically we need to refarm these frequencies to be able to place these applications that have a very high consumption in data. And I would say that this is the trend within Telefónica and many other major operators worldwide.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining me today. The wholesale discussions continue at 4 o'clock downstairs on the first floor. We are meeting again to look at the wholesale activities that we are going to undertake this year and get your feedback, get your input. So please join us if you are free. It's in the consulate room, first floor, opposite the MEF lounge on the other side of the staircase. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today.